So if we continue on about the mind and body, from Daniel Ingram, the first jhana, the first insight meditation stage, mind and body, nama and rupa. Thus, this first stage has a different quality to it from that of concentration practice, and they attain to direct and clear perception of the first knowledge of mind and body. There is this sudden shift, and mental phenomena shift out, away from the illusory sense of the watcher, and are just out there in the world with the sensations of the other 5 sense doors. This is an important insight, as it shows us clearly and directly that we are not our mind or our body. It is also a really nice, clear and unitive feeling state. It really is still more state-like than stage-like. And people can try to hold on to it, just as with the first jhana, and get stuck. Reality can seem just a bit more brilliant the first time one chances into mind and body, as in bright, brilliant. We may feel more alive and connected to the world. With the sensate experience of both mental and physical phenomena being clearly observable, the relationships and interactions between the two begin to become obvious. What is meant by the dualistic split is very obvious during this first stage. Somewhere around the first stage, either just before it or shortly after it, there may arise odd jaw pains on one side, throat tensions, and some other such unpleasant physical occurrences. Regardless, it soon becomes easy to see that each sensation is followed by the crude mental impression of it, and that intentions precede actions and thoughts. So we'll be seeing about the discussion of impermanence in part 1. Thus we come to 2, cause and effect. In this stage, the relationships between mental and physical phenomena become very clear, and sometimes ratchet-like. The joy and wonder of mind and body have left, and now the interactions between the mind and body become somewhat mechanical seeming. Motions, such as walking or the breath, may begin to get jerky, as there is the intention and the motion, the sensation and the mental impression of it, the cause and the effect, all occurring in a way which can seem sort of tight and robot-like. You note, the breath moves just a bit. You stop noting, the breath stops. You note quickly, the breath jerks quickly. You note slowly, the breath follows. There's noting rising, falling, forward, and they go together like blah, blah, blah. Some will stop noting quickly, or stop noting at all, thinking that they are messing up the breath. The advice here is, as before, note quickly and don't worry about what the breath does. Remember how I recommended trying to experience 1 to 10 sensations per second consistently, noting which were mental and which were physical. At this stage, the meditator is finally able to do this with a fair degree of skill, confidence and consistency. So you're watching, and as you watch for this time, 1,000, you notice that some of those were made up of mind elements and some were made up of actual genuine physical elements. So you just see the difference between the two, and that starts to have a chain reaction of realization going on. Those with stronger concentration tendencies or a bent towards such things may notice thoughts and perhaps even visions of insight into cause and effect on a macroscopic scale, where past action or circumstances led to various consequences. Some event led to some rebirth, some previous life led to something today, and in general may get a sense that they are able to intuit aspects of the working of karma in a way that they did not before, as the meditator becomes more clear about the beginnings and endings of each of these, about the irritation caused by this jerkiness, and about the fact that all of this seems to be happening fairly on its own, they come to directly perceive for themselves the three characteristics. This is the third aspect of the jhana. The three characteristics of impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, and egolessness, or non-self, become predominant, which is good, as these are the fundamental basis for insight. Here it begins to become quite clear that these intentions and actions, sensations, and the knowledge of them, and all of the constituents of this experience are quickly arising and passing, somewhat jarring, and not particularly in our control, or us. They are not particularly in our control, and they themselves are not particularly us that's in them. Further, as these sensations are all observed, including the crude mental impression that follows them, consciousness or awareness of, the whole of the mind and body process is not a separate self. It is merely a part of the interdependent world. These characteristics become clearer and clearer, as well as faster and faster, as the meditator diligently pays careful attention to exactly what is happening at each moment. For those doing noting practice, somewhere around here, your speed and precision may begin to get so fast that you cannot note every sensation you experience. Move to more general noting or monosyllabic noting, such as seeing for each sensation, experienced regardless of what it was, just what it was, like feeling, hearing, seeing. Or drop the noting entirely, stop the noting entirely, and stay with noticing bare sensation as it comes and goes, At this stage, practice begins to really take off, despite the fact that this stage tends to be fairly unpleasant. This unpleasantness tends to be mostly physical, though this stage can also cause numerous dark feelings and a sense of wanting to renounce the world and practice. And just practice, it means. I'll just flip the page there. Yeah. Occasionally, the early part of this stage can cause people to feel vulnerable, raw, and irritable to a small or large degree, in the ways that a migraine headache or a bad case of PMS can. I've occasionally been laid out on a couch for hours by this stage, holding my head and just wishing that these early stages didn't sometimes involve so much pain and anguish. There may be odd bodily twistings, obsession with posture and painful tensions, or strange other sensations, particularly in the back, neck and shoulders. These tensions may persist when not meditating and be quite irritating and even debilitating.
Rumbling?
No, I can't read the top of the page. The rhomboid and trapezium muscles are the most common offenders. It is common to try to sit with good posture and then find one's body twisting into some odd and painful position. Sorry, I've got a very unpredictable computer going on the back. I don't know what to do. And trapezium muscles are the most common offenders. It is common to try to sit with good posture and then find one's body twisting into some odd and painful position. You straighten out and soon enough it does it again. That's a very three characteristics sort of pattern. People sometimes describe these feelings as some powerful energy that is blocked and seems to want to get out or move through. Feelings of heat and sensations like those of a fever may sometimes accompany this stage. One's neck and back may become very stiff, either on one side or both sides. The right and left sides of one's body may feel quite different from each other sometimes. The easiest way to get these unpleasant physical manifestations to go away is to keep investigating the three characteristics, either of them or of whatever primary object you have chosen. These are common early retreat experiences, particularly in the first few days. Fighting them or trying other methods, back rubs, etc., seems to either help only a little, work only temporarily, or sometimes make them even worse, though sometimes Hatha Yoga and related practices done with a high degree of awareness can be helpful. This is a common time for people to go to health practitioners of various kinds, from orthopedists and dentists, from dentists to chiropractors and body workers, for example. I had a wisdom tooth removed during one pass through this stage because I thought it was throwing my jaw out of alignment, and perhaps it was, but this was clearly exacerbated by this stage. Even if these unpleasant physical manifestations do slack off for a bit, they are likely to keep coming back until one's insight is sufficient to progress beyond this part of this stage. Thus, should one find such things interfering with one's life, I recommend continued, precise and accepting practice. This is a phase of practice when strong effort and very quick investigation really pay off. Certain traditions may look at such physical manifestations as energy imbalances, or in some other negative light, and I can see where they are coming from, but I find those perspectives limiting. Rather, I see this stage in its broader context as just one more phase of practice. Others may invent very strange stories to explain these experiences. A friend of mine ran into this jhana on retreat, found it very unpleasant, stopped practicing and began to spin out in all sorts of fantastic stories in her head about how the poor fellow sitting next to her was very angry and how it was making her tense. This didn't help whatsoever and she got stuck there. I've learned to welcome these odd manifestations as clearly recognizable markers of progress on the path. They are clear objects for practice and reassure me that I am on the right track. Unfortunately, this is a hard lesson to teach others. True, these manifestations can suck, but being able to appreciate what is happening in the face of the difficult stages is important and becomes much more important later on. As the mind gains speed at really seeing each of the sensations of the mind and body come and go, and the jerkiness from the cause and effect can become quite rapid and pronounced. These physical movements and spasms seem to help break up the physical tension that may sometimes accompany this stage and are a sign of progress. So the important stage here, 4, the arising and passing away. Things arise, continue and pass away. This is also the beginning of the second Vipassana jhana. As in the second samatha jhana, the applied and sustained effort or attention begin to drop away. So for example, when you're trying to make a kasina, and you manage to make a kasina and you manage to stop even having to count to keep your attention, and it will simply just stay there without much effort, which is quite difficult to attain. This is the second jhana, when you stop needing to work and work and work and think and think and think and work, and you can just have the object and you get sustained attention, but no need to have applied thinking. This is the second jhana. What it means by the applied and sustained effort or attention begin to drop away. and meditation can seem to take on a life of its own. In the early part of this stage, the meditator's mind speeds up more and more quickly and begins to perceive as particles or fine vibrations of mind and matter, each arising and vanishing utterly at tremendous speed. The traditional texts actually call this stage the beginning of insight practice. Insight practices, Vipassana practices, as from this point on, there is a much more direct and non-conceptual understanding of the three characteristics. This stage is marked by dramatically increased perceptual abilities when compared with the previous stages. For example, one might be able to hone one's awareness to laser-like precision on the tip of one's little finger and seemingly be able to perceive the beginning and ending of every little sensation that made up that finger. Spontaneous, physical movements and strange jerky breathing patterns that showed up in cause and effect and become more pronounced in the three characteristics may speed up significantly. This stage explains where many practices such as Tibetan inner fire practices or of the yogic breath of fire come from. It can also reveal the source material that inspired such teachings, such as those about chakras and energy channels. Many descriptions of Kundalini awakening are talking about this stage. Reality is perceived directly with great clarity and great bliss, rapture, equanimity, mindfulness, concentration, and other positive qualities arise. Practice is extremely profound and sustainable, and there may be no pain even after hours of sitting. Unfortunately, the positive qualities that have arisen can easily become what are called the 10 corruptions of insight, the 10 upakalesas, which we went through last week. There's a circle of them. Now, the reason for this is that they are very pleasant, and therefore we can get greedy for them, we can get deluded about them. Rapture or light arises, and you think, well, I want more of that, or I'm already enlightened. So this is what means the corruption then happens because you spin off the path, you're no longer going in a straight direction. 10 corruptions of insights. If the true nature of the individual sensations by which they are known are not understood as well. And until this happens, a meditator can easily get stuck in the immature part of this stage. The 10 corruptions of insight are illumination, knowledge, rapturous happiness, tranquility, bliss, resolute confidence, exertion, assurance, equanimity, and attachment. To quote the great meditation master Sayadaw U Pandita from this great but very hard to find book, it's actually online, easy to find now, On the Path to Freedom. I've got this if anyone wants a thumb drive after. As for the practicing yogi, this is quoting, he will at once recognize the above as imperfections of insight, not representing Dhamma breakthrough, and are only to be noted off. Awareness of joy, awareness of tranquility, awareness of thoughts of knowledge and so on. Remembering the teacher's advice as to what is path and what is not path. Being disabled by the 10 imperfections, they would not be able to be capable of observing the triple characteristics in their true nature. But so like if you get joy or tranquility, you should ask yourself, is this permanent? Is it impermanent? Like that. And otherwise the mind clings to it and it wishes it was permanent, or it believes that it is, or so on. Or if the body feels like it's made of glass and solid, well, is that really impermanent or really impermanent? And so on. Or seeing any light, is that impermanent or not? But once freed from imperfections, he is able to do so, the noting and letting go. In short, they may feel that they are now a very mighty meditator, and that they should try to hold on to this forever, i.e. they should stop actually doing insight practices and instead solidify these qualities as concentration practice objects. Thus the advice given about the deconstructing and investigating the positive factors of the samatha jhanas, particularly the second one, is also very helpful when trying to stay on the narrow path of the progress of insight. visions, unusual sensory abilities, such as seeing nearby things through one's closed eyelids, out-of-body experiences, and especially bright lights tend to arise in the meditator. Sometimes, first as dual-toned sparkles, and then as a bright white light. I've seen the light. The technical meditator may easily sit for hours, dissecting their reality into extremely fine and fast sensations and vibrations, perhaps even up to 40 per second, or even more, with an extremely high level of precision and consistency. Where the absurd and disheartening rumours of billions of mind moments per second come from is beyond me. This is actually true. I think it's worth pointing out. He's the only person other than I was talking about before who I heard refer to this. When you study Abhidhamma, they give you a great big PDF chart of all these tiny mind moments and their elements, until there's sort of 52 per element. So and you get to sort of thinking you've understood what it means, and then they say that even in one blink there are billions of these things in a blink. Billions. And it's like, well, how you're talking about knowing mind moments, so how are you going to do that? I think what they're doing by then, in the Abhidhamma, they mix atoms and atomic theory with this kind of mind, what's meant by that. And we should be able to see mind moments more or less quite rapidly, more like film, which is 24 frames a second type thing, but not billions per split second. Not that. That's talking about, you might have billions of atoms in an eyelid, yeah. But often that's what's happened in later interpretations in Burmese about Abhidhamma. Somehow, and also some of the contemporary schools have said that without going to names. May spread over the body, revealing interference. I'll just go back and find what I was saying is. Fine vibrations may spread over the body, revealing interference patterns between experiences, enabling one to know directly that when one thing is experienced, in that instant, something else is not. So your mind can only hold one thing at a time in its attention. So even if you have an amazing buzzing experience, you suddenly find out that you're watching sound, and you can't hold the two things at the same time. Not precisely, only one and then the other one and the other one and the other. It's a very important point. It's also the way that the jhanas work by the fact you can only occupy, the mind can only hold one thing at a time, whether it's body, feelings, perception, mind state, or an imaginary object like Vipassana. Just a little bit aside. Enabling one to know directly that when one thing is experienced, in that instant something else is not. Absence and presence. It is very easy to confuse this stage with descriptions of stage 11, which is equanimity, especially as the stage before it, 10, reobservation, which we'll come to, has some distinct similarities to stage 3. The three characteristics. A brief discussion of the fractal nature of things that describes this will follow in the chapter about the Vipassana jhanas. The big difference is that this stage is ruled by quick cycles, rapid changing frequencies of vibrations, odd physical movements, strange breathing patterns, heady raptures, a decreased need for sleep, strong bliss, and a general sense of riding on a spiritual roller coaster with no brakes. I think he means brakes as in a car. The higher stages, 10 and 11, do not have those qualities. In the higher stages, that's strong equanimity. This is weak equanimity and something quite exciting and unpredictable going on, and quite a wonderful sort of sense. The other one is much more wise, basically. Hatisanga Yana is wise. You understand very clearly what's been happening and what's going on. This one you don't really understand what's going on. It's just coming at you and changing rapidly. As to the cycles, they tend to proceed as follows. With this description, assuming that you are using the breath as object, the mind kicks in, follows faster and faster vibrations, things really engage and speed up, perhaps accompanied by more pronounced shaking or strange breathing patterns increasing in speed, And then, finally, halfway down, an out-breath, there is a shift. Things drop down slowly. It takes work to stay with things as they slow down, and then things bottom out. The breath may stop entirely for a while. Then things come back up with the breath. Attention tends to flag, things relax, and then the cycle begins again with things speeding up, etc. These breathing cycles may happen quite on their own and maybe even be difficult to stop when we are deeply into this stage. This is happening mainly during sitting meditation. Those using visualizations as object, either kasinas or one of the others, or even the visualizations, like deities or whatever, those other using visualizations as objects may notice that the objects begin to spin with the phase of the breath, or move in ways that they seem to have a life of their own, albeit a two-dimensional one, as compared to the three-dimensional visions that may arise later. As this stage deepens and matures, meditators let go even of the high levels of clarity, and the other strong factors of meditation perceive even these to arise and pass as just vibrations, not satisfying, and to not be self. They may plunge down into the very depths of the mind as though plunging deep underwater to where they can perceive individual frames of reality arise and pass with breathtaking clarity as though in slow motion. It can even feel as if we have been submerged in thick syrup and partially sedated with some strong opiate-like drug. So pausing there before going on.